On a distant world covered in blue storms and silver towers, the Zyran High Council gathered inside a great circular hall. The air hummed with quiet tension as ancient holograms flickered above them, old stories about a lost race called humans. For thousands of years, the Zyrans believed humans were only legends, myths told to alien children before sleep. Some called them the children of fire, others called them the builders of stars. But no one had ever seen one. They were just stories. Elder Vero, the oldest among the council, raised his head. Once, he said softly, they ruled the skies. They made machines that sang, ships that ate suns, and minds that touched eternity. And then, they vanished. The hall fell silent. No one remembered when or how the humans disappeared. Some said they destroyed themselves. Others whispered that the universe itself turned against them. To the Zyrans, it didn't matter anymore. The humans were gone. Their name was a ghost. Yet tonight, as the twin moons crossed the sky, something strange happened. Deep inside the Zyran military station known as the Sentinel Array, alarms screamed for the first time in centuries. A young technician, barely trained, stared at the monitor. His hands shook. "Admiral," he whispered, "there's something out there." The Admiral frowned. "A storm." "No, sir," the technician replied. "A fleet." The screen showed shapes emerging from the darkness beyond the edge of the galaxy. Hundreds of massive ships, moving in perfect silence. They were old, metallic, scarred by time, but their engines burned with white fire. The Admiral leaned closer. "Identify them." The computer tried, failed, and displayed one word, unknown. "Send a signal," the Admiral ordered. "Find out who they are." The technician nodded and sent the call. For long minutes, only static filled the air. Then, a faint voice answered, deep and steady, filled with echoes of age. "This is the human Armada. We are home." The words struck the command room like thunder. Some officers froze. Others laughed nervously. "Impossible," one said. "Humans don't exist." The Admiral didn't laugh. He remembered the stories his mother told him as a child, the tales of warriors who burned their own world rather than surrender, of explorers who reached the edge of creation. His heart raced. He turned toward the window where the stars shimmered faintly. "If this is real," he whispered, "then history just woke up." Across the Zyran world, the news spread like wildfire. The humans had returned. Every network, every comm line, every city spoke of it. The younger generation was excited. They thought it was a lie or a prank. The elders were afraid. They remembered the legends too well. In the city's lower districts, people gathered to watch the sky. Some claimed they could already see the fleet, small like silver scars against the darkness. "What do they want?" someone asked. No one answered. The Zyran Council met again that night. The room was darker now, only the flicker of holographic stars lighting their faces. "It could be another race using their name," said Counselor Rena. "The humans are gone. They can't return." Elder Vero looked up slowly. "The universe doesn't forget," he said. "It only waits." On the screen, the unknown fleet drew closer. Their movement was slow, deliberate, like a sleeping giant stretching after ages of silence. They didn't respond to greetings, warnings, or offers of peace. They came without a sound, without a reason. Then, one by one, their ships aligned into formation. From orbit, they looked like a single massive shadow covering the stars. At that moment, every Zyran felt it, a pulse through the atmosphere, like the heartbeat of something ancient. The lights across cities flickered, and systems shut down for a second. The humans hadn't attacked, yet everyone knew they could. Elder Vero rose from his seat. "Prepare the archives," he said. "The age of stories is over." Far away, on the lead ship of the human Armada, a lone commander stood by a viewport. His armor was black, his face pale in the light of distant suns. His eyes were calm but cold, holding memories of centuries spent wandering the void. Behind him, the crew moved like ghosts, silent and precise. "Coordinates locked," said an officer. The commander nodded. "Signal the fleet," he said. "Phase 1 begins." He looked at the stars ahead, the same stars that once belonged to his ancestors, and spoke quietly, almost to himself. "They thought we were gone. Let them remember." Back on the Zyran homeworld, the first image of the human ships appeared on every screen, a sight no one believed they'd ever see. Massive black vessels, shaped like blades, moving with terrifying grace. Each bore a symbol, a burning white circle, the mark of Earth. People stared in silence. The stories were true. The myths had returned. And as the night deepened, every creature who could look up to the sky felt the same cold truth. The humans were no longer legends. They were coming. The news of the human fleet spread through the galaxy faster than light. Every station, every colony, every world whispered the same name: humans. For generations, they had been nothing more than stories told in quiet rooms, tales of a fierce and brilliant species that rose too fast and fell too hard. Now, those stories were moving across the stars, silent and unstoppable. On the Zyran homeworld, fear and disbelief mixed in the air. The High Council met again, this time surrounded by dozens of military officers and scientists. The great holographic display in the center of the hall showed the human armada, hundreds of ships advancing slowly but steadily towards Zyran space. No broadcasts, no greetings, no demands. Just cold, organized movement. Admiral Rethar spoke first, his voice sharp with tension. "They've entered the outer sector. If they continue at this speed, they'll reach our defense perimeter in 3 days." The council members exchanged worried glances. 3 days, murmured Councillor Rena. What do they want? Elder Vero stood silently near the edge of the table, his old eyes watching the fleet image. "They want to be seen," he said finally. "They want us to remember." Outside the council chamber, panic began to ripple through the population. News channels showed endless footage of the mysterious ships. Merchants closed their shops. Families stayed inside their homes. The night sky was no longer beautiful, it was filled with dread. A Zyran scientist named Kalen worked in a quiet laboratory far from the capital. He was one of the few who didn't fear the humans. To him, they were a mystery to solve. He stared at a transmission waveform, the faint signal the humans had sent earlier, the one that said, "We are home." He enhanced the audio again and again, until he realized something hidden beneath the static. There was another message buried under the words, a second voice, distorted but clear enough to chill his blood. "Prepare your skies." He recorded it, marked it classified, and sent it to the council. Hours later, a meeting was called again. The atmosphere was tense, every face pale. The transmission played in the silence of the chamber. When the second voice spoke, a shiver passed through the room. Admiral Rethar clenched his fists. "That's a threat," he said. "They mean war." Elder Vero shook his head slowly. "Not war," he murmured. "A warning." The admiral turned toward him angrily. "A warning of what?" "Of their return," Vero replied. "They're telling us to look to the skies because soon, we won't be able to look away." As the debate continued, the fleet drew closer. Zyran ships were sent to observe the humans from a safe distance, but none returned. The first scout vanished without a trace. The second ship sent back a single image before contact was lost. Dark silhouettes moving inside a sea of stars, followed by a burst of static and silence. Panic grew. The Zyran military went on full alert, activating ancient defense systems that hadn't been used in centuries. Orbital cannons turned toward the heavens, and planetary shields powered up for the first time in living memory. But deep down, every Zyran knew these defenses were built for wars between neighbors, not against legends. On the third day, the human armada stopped. They didn't enter Zyran space, didn't fire a single shot. They simply waited. Thousands of ships hovered at the border like a silent wall of metal and light. It was as if they were watching, judging. In the control room, Admiral Rethar stood before a giant display showing the fleet's formation. "They're holding position," said his officer. "No signs of aggression." "They're testing us," Rethar replied. They want to see how we react. The tension was unbearable. Entire civilizations across the nearby sectors were now watching. Some prepared for war, others prayed. The humans had said nothing more, yet their silence was louder than any threat. In the midst of the chaos, a private transmission arrived at the Zyran command center. It came directly from one of the human ships. The signal was faint, encrypted, but readable. Ret Har ordered it played immediately. The screen flickered, and a figure appeared. Tall, armored, face hidden by a black visor. The voice that spoke was calm, emotionless, and cold. "We come not as invaders, but as witnesses," it said. "Your world once knew us. You erased us from memory. You told your children we were myths. But myths never die. They wait." The image vanished before anyone could respond. No coordinates, no demands, nothing. Just those words. The council was silent. Rena finally spoke, her voice shaking. "If they're not here for war, then what are they here for?" Elder Vero's eyes glowed faintly in the holographic light. "Maybe they came to remind the galaxy that humans are not stories," he said. "They are history returning to claim its place." That night, as the twin moons rose again, millions of Zyrans stood outside, staring at the sky. In the distance, faint lights shimmered, human ships, waiting in the dark like ancient gods watching over creation. A low hum filled the air, almost like a heartbeat echoing through the planet. For the first time in 1,000 years, the people of Zyran felt truly small. In the Great Hall, Elder Vero wrote a single sentence in the official record: "The humans have returned, and they do not speak like conquerors, they speak like memories come alive." Far away, aboard the lead human ship, Admiral Kale watched the planet through his viewport. His voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "They remember us as monsters," he said to his crew. "Let them see what forgetting cost them." The stars outside burned brighter, and the fleet began to move again, slow, graceful, unstoppable. The silence of centuries had ended. The age of myths was over, and the era of humans had begun. The third sunrise over the Zyran capital brought no peace. The human armada still hung at the edge of their skies, motionless yet full of silent power. The people were restless, the soldiers afraid, and the council divided. Some demanded an immediate attack before the humans could strike first. Others wanted to open communication and seek peace. No one truly knew what the humans wanted. They waited like shadows at the border of the known universe, and the not knowing was worse than war itself. Inside the Grand Council Hall, the tension was thick enough to choke the air. Elder Vero stood by the great window, his gaze locked on the faint lights that shimmered in the heavens. "We cannot attack," he said firmly. "If we strike first, we invite our own destruction." Admiral Ret Har slammed his hand on the table. "And if we do nothing, they will destroy us anyway." His voice echoed through the chamber. The counselors argued for hours, but no decision came. In the end, it was fear that forced their hand. The Zyrans would send an envoy, a small ship carrying diplomats and translators, to make first contact with the human fleet. "If they are reasonable, we will speak," said Counselor Rena. "If they are hostile, at least we will know." The envoy ship, Vessel of Dawn, left the Zyran atmosphere at dusk, a fragile light moving into a sea of darkness. Inside the ship, Ambassador Theran felt his stomach twist with dread. "Do you think they'll talk to us?" his assistant asked. Theran didn't answer. He had seen the ancient human images in the archives, strong, brilliant, and terrifying. Now he was going to face them. As the ship approached the fleet, human vessels came into view. They were enormous, metallic giants floating in perfect formation. Their surfaces glowed faintly with strange symbols, some ancient, some unrecognizable. The ship's sensors picked up faint energy waves unlike anything in Zyran records. "Open a channel," Theran said. "Let's show them we come in peace." His voice shook as he spoke the words into the transmitter. "This is the Zyran envoy, requesting dialogue with the human command." For several minutes, there was only silence. Then a voice responded, deep and mechanical, with a calmness that made Theron's blood run cold. "You may approach. Follow the beacon." A faint blue light blinked ahead, guiding their small ship toward the largest human vessel. As they drew closer, the sheer size of it made them feel like insects before a god. The ship's hull was covered in markings that seemed alive, pulsing slowly like veins of light. The Xyrans landed in a massive hangar. The air shimmered with faint heat, and the floor was lined with dark metal. Figures emerged from the shadows, humans, tall and armored, their faces hidden behind black visors. The Xyran guards tightened their grips on their weapons, but the Ran raised a hand to stop them. One of the armored humans stepped forward. His voice echoed through the hangar, calm and deep. "You come to speak?" "Yes," the Ran said carefully. "We seek peace and understanding." The human tilted his head slightly, as if studying him. "Peace," he repeated, the word sounding strange on his tongue. "Do you know what peace cost us?" The Ran hesitated. "No," he said quietly. "But we wish to learn." The human turned slightly, gesturing toward a corridor of white light. "Then you will meet the one who remembers." The Xyrans followed in silence. The corridor led them into a vast chamber filled with holographic images, planets burning, fleets destroyed, cities lost to time. At the center stood a figure in dark armor, unmasked. His face was pale, marked with scars that looked older than any lifetime. His eyes were sharp, bright, and endless. "I am Admiral Kale," he said simply. "Commander of the human Armada." The Ran bowed his head slightly. "I am Ambassador the Ran of Xyran Prime. We believed humans were gone." Kale's lips curled into a faint smile. "Gone? No. Forgotten, yes. You told the stars we were myths. You erased our history from your records. But the void remembers what you tried to bury." The Ran swallowed hard. "We didn't erase you. We only lost you." Kale stepped closer, his armor reflecting the cold light of the room. "Lost us? You turned your backs when we needed allies. When the Vorn came, you hid behind your walls while our world burned. You watched the fire from your distant stars." The ambassador's voice trembled. "That was before our time." "Perhaps," Kale said softly. "But the blood remembers." The room fell silent. The hologram shifted, showing Earth as it once was, green, blue, alive, and then burning, shattered into dust. Kale's voice became a low growl. "We left our dying home with nothing but pain. For centuries, we wandered. We became one with the void, with machines, with the silence. We built the Armada from the bones of lost worlds." He turned away, looking toward the stars through a transparent wall. "And now we return, not as conquerors, but as witnesses." The Ran took a slow breath. "What do you want from us?" Kale's gaze didn't move. "Truth," he said simply. "And remembrance." The humans escorted the Xyrans back to their ship. No weapons were raised, no threats made. But when the vessel of dawn departed, every soul aboard felt they had stood before something far greater than war. When they returned to the Xyran capital, the people gathered to hear their report. The Ran spoke to the council in a trembling voice. "The humans live. They have power beyond our understanding. But they do not seek destruction. They seek memory." Elder Vero closed his eyes, whispering to himself. "The legends were never about monsters. They were about us." That night, as the human fleet moved closer to the inner orbit, the stars above Xyran Prime burned brighter than ever before. And somewhere in the endless dark, the human admiral looked at the glowing planet and said quietly, "Let them remember who we were." The dawn that rose over Xyran Prime was blood-red, the kind of morning that made even the bravest hearts uneasy. The human armada now filled half the sky, their colossal ships orbiting like silent sentinels above the planet. Yet, they had not fired a single shot. The Xyran defense systems were active, shields raised, cannons charged, but all of it felt useless against the quiet power that hovered beyond the clouds. It was not an invasion. It was something far more terrifying, a reminder of how small they truly were. Across the capital, the people lived under constant fear. Every shadow in the sky was a human ship, every flicker in the light felt like an omen. But the strangest thing of all was the silence. No attacks. No messages. Only waiting. The humans were patient, like predators that already knew they had won. Inside the Zyran military command, Admiral Rethar stood before a massive holographic map of the planet. Red symbols marked every defense station, every cannon, every active patrol. "They've been here for 6 days," he said, his voice tight. "Not a word, not a move. They could wipe us out in minutes, yet they do nothing. Why?" Elder Vero, who had been invited to the meeting, spoke softly. "Perhaps they already have." Rethar frowned. "What do you mean?" "The humans don't need to destroy cities to win," Vero replied. "They destroy certainty. They make us afraid of the sky. That's a different kind of conquest." The Admiral looked out the window toward the horizon, where a faint glow marked the shadow of a ship drifting in the upper atmosphere. "If that's true," he said bitterly, "then they've already won." Far away, in the lower districts of the city, strange things began to happen. Machines started to malfunction. Power grids flickered on and off. Communication systems jammed with bursts of static. Zyran scientists tried to trace the cause, but there was no virus, no attack, no code. It was as if the machines themselves had stopped obeying. Then came the first broadcast. Every screen, every device, every speaker across Zyran Prime turned black, and then a voice spoke, calm, emotionless, undeniably human. "Do not fear. We are not your enemy. But your weapons will no longer obey you." The message ended, leaving the world in silence once again. When the council gathered, panic filled the room. "They have control of our systems," cried Councillor Rena. "They can shut down our entire world." Admiral Rethar slammed his fist on the table. "Then we fight the old way, ships, soldiers, courage." But even as he spoke, the truth was clear. The humans had already crippled their technology. Zyran fleets in orbit were dead, floating silently, their engines cold. Defense drones had fallen from the sky. The humans hadn't fired a single shot, yet they had taken everything. Elder Vero rose from his seat. "This is not war," he said. "This is demonstration." On the flagship Sol's Wrath, Admiral Kale watched the planet below with silent intensity. His officers moved around him with mechanical precision. "Zyran defense grid neutralized," one of them reported. "No casualties." Kale nodded. "Good. Proceed to Phase 2. Show them what fear without fire feels like." The human fleet began to move again, slowly descending into the upper atmosphere. Their ships cast vast shadows over Zyran cities, blotting out the sunlight. From the ground, they looked like floating mountains of black steel. The people gathered in the streets, staring upward, frozen between awe and terror. 4 hours, the humans hovered above every major city, watching but never attacking. Then, one by one, their ships released beams of light, not weapons, but scans. Blue rays swept across the land, mapping every inch, reading every signal, collecting every secret. Within minutes, the humans knew everything about the planet, its defenses, its leaders, even its history. The council tried to send a message to the human command, begging for communication, but every attempt was blocked. The only response came in the form of a short signal, repeated 3 times, "Phase 1 complete." The meaning was unclear, but the fear it spread was not. That night, the skies above Zyran Prime glowed faintly with strange patterns, lines of light forming ancient symbols. People whispered that it was the human language, a message written across the heavens. In the midst of confusion, Zyran scientists finally discovered something horrifying. The humans were not just controlling machines, they had become part of them. Their ships, their armor, even their voices carried traces of something beyond organic life. They were no longer entirely human. They had merged with their own creations. "They didn't evolve," one scientist said in disbelief. "They rebuilt themselves." The council was silent when the report was read. No one could imagine what kind of suffering had driven the humans to become what they were now. Elder Vero whispered, "They went into the dark to survive, and in the dark, they became the dark." The next morning, when the people of Xiren Prime looked to the sky, the human ships were gone. Only faint trails of white light remained, fading slowly into the clouds. For a brief moment, the world felt calm again, until a message appeared on every screen, written in the same calm human voice. Phase 2 begins soon. Remember who we are. And then, silence returned. Admiral Kale stood on the bridge of his ship, staring into the void. "They've seen what we've become," he said to his second-in-command. "Now they will understand why." The officer nodded. "And if they don't?" Kale's eyes hardened. "Then history will remind them." In the cold light of the distant sun, the human fleet turned its engines toward the next world. The war of fear had begun, and no one, not even the stars, could escape the memory of mankind. The days that followed were heavy with silence. The human fleet had vanished from Xiren skies, leaving behind a planet that no longer trusted its own reflection. The lights worked again, the ships flew, the systems hummed, but everyone knew they were being watched. Every transmission, every pulse of energy, carried the quiet fear that the humans could return at any moment. The council called it a period of calm, but the people called it the waiting. Rumors began to spread. Some said the humans had spared Xiren Prime as a warning, others believed they were preparing something far greater. In the heart of the capital, a young historian named Lyra worked in the great archives, searching through ancient records that most had forgotten existed. Her task was simple: to find proof of what really happened to the humans. But what she found would change everything. The archive was deep below the surface, filled with old digital fragments and half-erased histories. Lyra spent long nights decoding lost transmissions, piecing together fragments of forgotten wars. One evening, she uncovered a hidden file marked with a single word: Earth. The file was locked, sealed centuries ago by the first Xiren Council. Her heart raced as she bypassed the encryption. The screen flickered, and an ancient message began to play. It was human. The voice was tired, broken, but full of defiance. "To whoever finds this," it said, "we are the last of Earth. Our allies have betrayed us. The Vorn and their partners have taken our skies. They promised protection but brought fire instead. We fought alone. And when the last city fell, we sent our children into the dark. One day they will return, not for revenge, but for remembrance." Lyra froze. The betrayal. The humans had not vanished on their own. They were destroyed by the same races who now ruled the galaxy, including, perhaps, her own. She read through more fragments. Documents, trade agreements, secret council orders, all pointing to one truth. The Xyrens had been part of an ancient alliance that chose to abandon Earth to save themselves. The humans hadn't been forgotten. They had been erased. Lyra rushed to the council chamber, her voice trembling as she faced the leaders. "We lied," she said. "The humans didn't vanish. We betrayed them." Gasps filled the room. Admiral Rethar leaned forward, his expression unreadable. "What proof do you have?" Lyra placed the old hologram on the table. The human message played again, echoing through the silent hall. When it ended, no one spoke for a long time. Elder Vero broke the silence first. This is why they came back," he whispered. "Not to conquer us, but to make us remember what we did." Counselor Rena stood abruptly. "If this is true, then we must tell them. We must ask forgiveness before it's too late." But even as she spoke, the lights dimmed, and the room vibrated with a low hum. A shadow fell across the city. The humans had returned. The Armada reappeared above Xiren Prime, this time in perfect formation. No longer silent, their ships glowed with lines of white energy like veins of living light. A single transmission was broadcast across the entire planet. The voice was calm, familiar. "Admiral Kale." "Xiren Prime," he said. "You have awakened your past. We do not seek war. We seek memory. The council stood frozen as Kale continued. We remember the day you turned your eyes away when our world burned. We remember your silence while our children died in the dark. But we also remember what we once were. Builders, dreamers, explorers. We come to rebuild what was lost, not to destroy what remains. The message ended, and for the first time, the humans made no attempt to hide. Their ships descended into the upper atmosphere, forming patterns of light that covered the skies. From orbit, they deployed small vessels, drones, unarmed, scattering across the planet. Wherever they landed, they projected images of Earth as it once was. Green forests, blue oceans, golden cities. The people watched in silence, overwhelmed by the beauty of a world they had never seen. Children pointed to the images, whispering, "So that's where they came from." Lyra stood among the crowd, tears in her eyes. She finally understood. The humans weren't here to conquer, they were here to teach the galaxy what had been forgotten, the price of betrayal, and the strength of survival. That night, the council sent a message to the human fleet. "We know what we did," it said. "We are ready to face our history." Hours passed before a reply came. The face of Admiral Kale appeared once more. "Then you will meet me," he said. "We have much to remember." In the great hall of the council, the humans arrived for the first time in centuries. They walked among the Xyrans, tall, calm, wrapped in armor that seemed alive. The silence was deep as Kale stepped forward. His eyes were sharp but tired, carrying the weight of centuries. "We do not seek revenge," he said. "Revenge belongs to the dead. We seek truth. We seek the end of forgetting." Lyra spoke from the back of the hall. "Then let us remember together." Kale looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Together," he said. Outside, the skies of Xyran Prime shimmered with the light of the human fleet. For the first time, there was no fear in their presence. Only understanding. The ghosts of history had returned, not as destroyers, but as witnesses to the truth. And as the night passed into morning, every Xyran knew the same thing: the humans had not come to bring war. They had come to bring the memory of what it meant to be human. The meeting between humans and Xyrans changed everything. For the first time in living memory, the myths stood among the living. The human delegation, led by Admiral Kale, stood silent in the grand hall as thousands watched the broadcast from every city across Xyran Prime. They were taller, stronger, and their armor seemed to move with them like a living shadow. Yet, their eyes held something unexpected: sadness. Kale stepped forward, his voice calm and steady. "We were forgotten," he said. "But we did not forget. We traveled through darkness, through storms of radiation and silence, through centuries without home or sun. We became one with the void to survive. Now we return not as conquerors, but as witnesses." The hall was still. No one dared to breathe. Elder Vero bowed his head. "Then bear witness to this," he said quietly. "We wronged you. We left you to die." Kale looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. Acknowledgement is the first step toward truth. The humans shared fragments of their journey, holograms of ancient starfields, derelict worlds, and the great exodus from Earth. They spoke of how they had merged with machines, how their bodies and ships had become extensions of the same mind. They had evolved beyond biology, beyond weakness, but at a terrible cost. They had lost what it meant to feel. "We no longer dream," said Kale. "We only remember." Lyra, the young historian, stepped forward from the crowd. "Then let us dream again," she said. "Together." The Admiral turned toward her, his expression unreadable. "You believe peace is possible after what your ancestors did?" "I believe the galaxy has forgotten what peace means," she replied. "You came back to remind us." Kale's gaze softened slightly. "Perhaps you are right." Over the next days, the humans remained in orbit, and for the first time, communication between the two species became open. Xyran scientists visited human ships, studying their technology. Human officers visited Xyran cities, walking among the people. What began as suspicion slowly turned into awe. The humans had become something close to gods, beings of light and steel, but they never acted with arrogance. They observed, listened, and spoke rarely. Then, one night, Kale invited the Zyran Council aboard his flagship, the Soul's Wrath. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. The walls pulsed softly with blue light, and the air felt alive, filled with a faint hum like the heartbeat of a planet. "Your ship feels like it's breathing," Rena whispered. "It does," Kale said. "She is part of us. Every vessel in our fleet carries a fragment of our minds. We are many, but we think as one." Elder Vero studied him carefully. "Then why come back?" he asked. "If you have become something greater, why return to those who betrayed you?" Kale's eyes turned to the stars beyond the glass window. "Because we are not whole," he said. "We left part of ourselves behind in this galaxy. In its soil, in its lies, in its silence. We came to reclaim it." He pressed a control, and the holographic map of the galaxy appeared. At the center burned a red mark, the Vorn Empire. "They were the ones who led the betrayal," Kale said. "But they were not alone. Many stayed silent. The Zyrans among them." A low murmur filled the room. Kale raised his hand. "We will not repeat the past. The Armada will not burn worlds. But we will not forgive the Vorn. They must face the truth of what they did. We ask this of you: stand with us, or vanish with them." The council was stunned. The choice was impossible. Join the humans and risk war with the Vorn, or refuse and risk extinction. Admiral Rethar spoke first. "We have seen your power. The Vorn will not stand against it. But if we join you, what happens after the war?" Kale's gaze was steady. "Then we rebuild. Not as gods, not as myths, as allies." Elder Vero looked at him for a long time, then nodded slowly. "The Zyrans will stand with you." Across the galaxy, the news spread like fire. The impossible had happened. The humans had formed an alliance. Other species began to send secret signals, offering support. Some out of fear, others out of respect. The old balance of power trembled. The Vorn, realizing what was coming, began preparing for war. Their broadcasts were full of defiance. "The ghosts of Earth have returned," they declared. "But ghosts cannot conquer the living." Kale watched those broadcasts without emotion. "They will learn," he said quietly. As the fleet prepared for the final campaign, Lyra visited Kale one last time. They stood in the observation deck, watching the stars drift past like slow embers. "You don't have to destroy them," she said softly. "You've already won. The galaxy remembers now." Kale's voice was calm. "Remembrance without consequence is just another lie." He turned to her, his expression softening. "But maybe we will stop before becoming what we once feared." "You already have," she said. "You came back not to destroy, but to remind." Kale looked out into the stars once more. "Perhaps. But reminders can be sharp things." The fleet engines began to glow. Thousands of ships aligned in perfect silence, forming a single bright line across the void. The Zyran fleet joined beside them, smaller but determined. Together, they looked like a river of light flowing toward the dark heart of the galaxy. "Admiral," said Kale's second-in-command, "the Armada stands ready." Kale raised his hand slowly. "Then let history breathe again." The human and Zyran alliance set course for the Vorn homeworld, where the final truth of the galaxy would be decided. And as they vanished into the dark, the stars seemed to whisper, the myths were not dead. They were marching. The human-Zyran alliance moved through space like a living storm. Thousands of ships cut across the void in absolute silence, their engines burning blue against the black. The Vorn Empire had already begun fortifying its worlds, spreading fleets across key systems, but nothing could stop what was coming. At the heart of the Armada stood Admiral Kale's flagship, Soul's Wrath, surrounded by human dreadnoughts and Zyran cruisers. From a distance, it looked like a city drifting through eternity. Inside the command bridge, Kale stood before the star map that displayed their target, the Vorn homeworld of Tyrus Prime. Its defenses shimmered like a steel net across the stars. "They've prepared for us," said Commander Aaron. "Hundreds of ships, orbital cannons, and planetary shields." Kale didn't blink. "Good," he said softly. "They remember fear." Meanwhile, on the Zyran ship Eclipse, Lyra watched the battle preparations with a heavy heart. The air hummed with the tension of war. She had dreamed of peace, but she knew now that some truths could only be written in fire. "Maybe they're right," she whispered to herself. "Maybe the past can't be forgiven." Over the next few hours, both fleets aligned, forming an enormous crescent around the Vorn system. The galaxy watched in silence. Every species that once doubted the humans now held their breath. The myths had returned to make history real again. The countdown began. Kale looked toward the stars and gave the order, "Engage." Space exploded with light. Human plasma cannons tore through the first wave of Vorn ships, their impact glowing like small suns. The Vorn fought back fiercely, their black ships darting between debris, firing beams of red energy that ripped through smaller vessels. Zyran cruisers flanked the sides, covering human dreadnoughts with precision fire. The battle was chaos, but it was controlled chaos, a dance only ancient warriors could perform. "Shields at 60%, Aaron reported. "They're targeting our flank." Kale's expression remained cold. "Let them think they're winning," he said. "Deploy the second wave." Dozens of hidden ships uncloaked, surrounding the Vorn formation. Within minutes, entire enemy squadrons were wiped from existence. Tyrus Prime began to shake under orbital bombardment. On the planet's surface, the Vorn command center sent desperate transmissions into the void. "We will not surrender to ghosts," one shouted before static swallowed his voice. Kale stared at the message replaying before him. "You should never have forgotten us," he whispered. The humans had come not just for revenge, but for truth. For every ship they destroyed, they transmitted archives, proof of the betrayal that had erased their species, the alliances broken, and the lies that built the modern empires. The entire galaxy watched as ancient crimes came to light. "They buried us," Kale said, "but they did not expect us to grow roots in the dark." As the Vorn fleet collapsed, Kale received a message from Elder Vero aboard a Zyran vessel. "Admiral," Vero said gravely, "their world is breaking. You have your victory." Kale looked distant. "Victory was never the goal," he replied. "Understanding was." "Then let them live," Vero said. "End this." Kale hesitated. The ship sensors displayed the burning surface of Tyrus Prime. Cities turned to ash, oceans to glass. "Commander," Kale said, "cease orbital fire." The guns fell silent. The void grew calm again. All that remained were drifting wrecks and dying stars. The Vorn were defeated. The war was over in less than 2 days. Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. "The humans have returned," the broadcast said. "And they have judged." But to everyone's surprise, the humans didn't claim the Vorn worlds. They didn't demand tribute or rule. Instead, they left behind transmitters broadcasting a single message: "Remember us. Remember the cost of silence." Weeks later, in the great ruins of what was once the Vorn capital, Kale walked among the shattered towers. The air shimmered with heat and dust. Lyra followed behind him, her eyes wide with sorrow. "Was it worth it?" she asked quietly. Kale stopped, looking at the horizon where the twin suns rose over the ruins. "It had to be done," he said. "The universe forgets too easily." "But what now?" she asked. "Will the humans stay?" Kale turned to her, his gaze distant. "We are not meant to stay," he said. "We are the memory that walks. Our duty is to remind, not to rule." "Then where will you go?" "Beyond the edge again," he said. "There are still echoes out there, lost colonies, forgotten voices. We will find them." Lyra's voice trembled. "And us? The Zyrans?" Kale gave a faint smile. "You will rebuild. You have seen the truth. That's enough." Elder Vero joined them, his steps slow but steady. You could have taken everything, he said. Power, resources, worlds. Why walk away? Kale looked at the sky. Because that's what they did, he said. The ones who betrayed us, they couldn't stop taking. That's why we lost ourselves. We learned something in the dark. Power without purpose is just another kind of death. The silence stretched between them. Above, the fleet began to move, engines glowing faintly as they prepared to leave orbit. They'll make legends of you again, Vero said quietly. They'll tell stories. Kale nodded slowly. Then let them tell them right this time. He reached out his hand, placing a small data crystal in Lyra's palm. This holds everything, our history, our pain, our truth. Keep it safe. Let it remind your people who we were. Lyra's eyes shimmered. I will, she whispered. Kale turned toward his ship, his figure outlined by the burning dawn. Farewell, Lyra of Xiren. You gave us something we thought lost forever. What's that? She asked softly. Hope, he said. Moments later, Sol's wrath lifted from the ground, followed by the rest of the human fleet. The sky filled with streaks of light as they vanished into the stars. The Xyrens stood in silence, watching until nothing remained but the faint trails of blue fire. Somewhere far away, among distant galaxies, the human armada continued its journey, not as conquerors, but as the last guardians of memory. And across every world that had once doubted their existence, a single phrase became legend once more. Humans were just stories, until their armada arrived.